All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for joining me on Off the Court. The name is Wenson Mavoro, a basketball show deliberately and specifically designed to be able to promote conversations that build basketball within Zambia and outside Zambia, looking and focusing on the African continent and beyond. As usual, we talk basketball here, and of course, I get to have different guests that come through to be able to talk to us and discuss basketball, sometimes even tell us some of the things that they've learned from playing the beautiful game of basketball. And this evening I am privileged to be able to be joined by a name that does not need much introduction, and that is no other than Will Perry. Some of you have watched this gentleman play basketball, like a demigod. I like to refer to him. I had a privilege, Will, of watching you last year in Kigali when you were playing with Rivers Hoopers, in those semifinal, and and I mean, I was busy calling and telling point guards back at home to say, look, if there's a dude that you need to watch on this position, this is your guy. So I'm very much excited and, privileged just to be able to have you on the show. And I also would like to just say thank you for taking time out to come and talk to the African continent. And I know I've got Innocent who watches me from Finland. I've got people that watch me, from the States, Allison, everybody else that normally joins and takes part and parcel in this conversation. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we get to start our conversation this evening, Will Perry obviously is the name that everybody knows, but for the sake of those that may not know who Will is, from the host's mouth, who is Will Perry?
Yeah, first, thanks for having me on, and thanks for the kind words. It means a lot. Yeah, like you said, my name's Will Perry. Okay, I'm from North Carolina, United States, and I've been playing professionally for, I think this will be my 8th season. So I grew up in a town called Wake Forest, North Carolina. Played at a small university in North Carolina called Lenoir-Rhyne University. And then I went overseas to play. I played in Spain, Portugal, several other European countries. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I started playing in Africa. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about my career, in a short little story there.
Okay, so obviously there's a whole lot that we're going to, talk about when we get to discuss a little bit about your career earlier on. But being a person that, comes from the United States of America, which we all look to be, I like saying the US is the maker of basketball. Of course, others may argue, but that's just my opinion at the end of the day.
Sure.
But I mean, coming from the United States of America and playing in Africa and all these other places where you've been, how would you describe your experience playing on the African continent?
It's been amazing, honestly. Africa is, yeah, first of all, like, when you're an American and you get out of college and you have the ability to be a professional, it's really hard to get into the NBA. The NBA is a really exclusive club. It's top, I don't know what it is, maybe 300, 400 players. I mean, it's next to impossible to make the NBA. Obviously, some guys do. I didn't. But after that, you really got to go overseas. You got to go to different places if you want to, make money playing basketball. And Africa was like the last place I thought I would ever be, to be honest. But when I went there, I had no expectations at all. And I can tell you that it's probably like it's definitely my favorite continent that I've played on. And the BAL that I played in the past couple of years is probably my favorite league I've ever played in. So it's exceeded my expectations. It's not something I ever thought I would do, play basketball in Africa, but I'm so glad I did it, and I hope to stick around for more time.
You mentioned something very important, about the NBA being an exclusive club and it not being easy to make it. As a professional, what would you advise the young girls and boys that dream from a continent like Africa? I know there's a few individuals that we have, talk about the Joel Embiid, size, advantage, and all these other things, played a huge role in him being where he is. Talk about Pascal Siakam. There are all these guys that we have right now that are playing in the NBA from the African continent. And when you say it is not easy, I mean, I agree with you, it's not easy. But what would you encourage kids that look to those guys and feel like, you know what? I think I can also try and do it.
I would say try it. I would say aim for the NBA. If you really have a dream to play professional basketball, go for the NBA. I tried. You know, you need to aim for that goal because it is the best league in the world, and you can do it from the African continent. You can do it 100%. There's a pathway, especially now. So if you're a young African player, dream about the NBA. Try to get there, and know that if it doesn't work out, you can still have a career in other places, and even on your home continent now with the eruption of basketball, you can have a career right there in Africa. So aim for the NBA. Go for it with all your heart, and and know that if you aim for the top and you don't quite reach there, there's a place for you in other countries and other leagues and other scenarios. So I would tell young African kids that right now is the best time with the BAL, the access to the internet
Mm.
now. It's the best time for young African players to try to make their dreams come true, no doubt.
Okay. One of the things that obviously when we talk about, or maybe let me now just get to the on-court experience. Like I said, I was privileged to watch you play basketball, and I must mention that I was impressed, with the type of hard play, hustle, and you being able to just, assert yourself and, dominate on that stage. We would like to find out, what is your most memorable moment on the court in your journey throughout Africa? For those, by the way, that may not know, I know you were being modest in your introduction when you say, no, you've played in Africa, you've played in the United States of America. Those that do not know, you've actually played serious basketball on the continent. There are accolades that you carry. You've won MVPs in Mozambique, you've won the championship, you've played in Rwanda, you've played in Nigeria, you've represented all these countries at the highest level. And not only that, you've actually won serious accolades on the Basketball Africa League. But before we get to those individual achievement, what is your most memorable experience on the court?
Yeah, thank you for the words. My most memorable achievement, I think it would have to be this past season, getting third place in the BAL with River. I did win 2 championships in Mozambique. I got MVP, and I even in the next season I scored the most points in BAL history with 41 points. That was soon broken. A guy scored 42 last year, I think it was, and he broke my record. But so those are all cool experiences. But the best one would have to be getting River Supers to third place. The reason being is because Nigeria was obviously everyone knows Nigeria has amazing talent, amazing players, but sometimes they have a bad reputation for structure and just unable to live up to the talent that they usually have. And we were able to kind of like destroy that perception last year and make it all the way to third place. And I thought just being a part of that, so winning that quarterfinal game against Monastir, Tunisia, that might be my best memory. Just feeling the love from Nigerian people for taking their team to to like the top 4 of the semifinals was I felt like we overcame a lot. So that was probably my best memory in Africa so far. But I've had a lot of good memories. It's tough to choose.
Another thing that just from what you've described, one of the things that I always want to ask people like you, that are living the dream of the majority of African kids that are watching us right now, has to do with your mindset altogether. And I would like to find out in terms of, mindset, preparation, what can you let us in a little bit on that? Because, when I was watching you the other time, I'm like, this guy, where do you get the courage to play among players that are, in some cases almost twice your size, but you're there dominating, doing things. And, basketball traditionally, I remember there's a coach that used to tell me in the past that, basketball is a game for tall people. If you're small, you have to work twice as hard. And he would give crazy examples like, why do you think the hoop is up and not here or down there? It- you know, crazy analogies like those. But at the end of the day, what mindset do you carry, do you have, to be able to compete among the bigger guys, among the Goliaths, and dominate and be able to just do your thing and shine at that stage?
Yeah, your coach is right, to be honest. Tall people do have a major advantage in our sport. There's no question. But yeah, man, look, for me, it's about discipline. I think that's my biggest strength that I always tell people. It's discipline. I'm always in shape. I make sure I eat correctly. I don't miss workouts. I'm always working out. I'm always in shape. I always try to have a confidence about me on the court, but the confidence comes from the work that I put in and the discipline that I showed during the practice sessions, during the preparation, my eating habits, my sleeping habits. So I don't go into the game saying, "All right, I'm going to dominate everybody," but I do go into the game saying I'm ready, and I really believe that I'm ready because I put in the work beforehand and did all the things I needed to do to get to that point. I talk a lot to young African kids now about that stuff because sometimes they want the result really quickly, but like they didn't put in the work to get to that result, or sometimes they're not confident in themselves. And it's because they didn't put in the work. They're not sure that they can make the shot. They're not sure they can play 25 minutes at a high level. And they're not sure they can guard one on one. But if they put in the work beforehand, they wouldn't be asking those questions. They would be confident in their ability. So I think discipline plays a big part in mindset, and I'm trying to spread that to everybody.
I love the fact that you've raised the issue of discipline, and at the same time, the issue of money. A lot of people that I interact with will always say, look, I can't put in the work because I don't get paid. I need to get paid first. I need to see the
Sure.
contract. You need to show me the numbers. And only then can I be able to start putting in the work. As a professional, is that the correct approach to things?
In my opinion, no. I think that's completely wrong. To me, like I take a big not offense, but like, yeah, I take offense to players when they're not being humble because I came from a Division II really small school in North Carolina, and I started my first professional season making barely any money, and I would have gone for free. I would have gone for free. Just give me the opportunity, and I would have tried to make something out of nothing. So when players are entitled, they've already lost. So you got to be humble. It's a slow process unless you're coming from a big, a big school in the United States, or you're coming from the NBA Academy in Africa. But even then, you still need to be humble and know that it's going to be a process. Like you're not going to get instant gratification. You're not going to be instantly rich from basketball. You got to take it step by step, and you got to be humble enough to know that you got to put in the work, and they don't just give this money out for free. That's what a trainer used to tell me all the time. It's kind of a funny saying, but yeah, they don't just give the money out for free. Like you got to deserve it. It's somebody's hard-earned money that's pouring into a club or pouring into a player for basketball. So they're going to spend it wisely. So why would you deserve it? You got to prove it to them, right? So that's how I see it.
Okay, interesting stuff right there. Now, let me ask you this. With the introduction of the Basketball Africa League, obviously the basketball stage on the African continent has been opened up, to talent from all over the world that would want to come here, do their thing and showcase their talent. And then we also have got people like you that come all the way from the United States of America, you know, arguably with the best facilities, good training programs, advanced basketball exposure in most aspects compared to here. What would you tell kids on the African continent? What would you advise them in terms of how they can prepare to be able to compete with people like you that can also come and, play on this stage?
Yeah, it's a huge disadvantage in Africa, the economic portion of it. You're right. In the U.S., we have great facilities. The culture of basketball is really, really, really big there. We have a huge history of basketball. Another thing that we have that Africa doesn't have is high level coaching. Africa is still missing high level coaching. Sometimes the kids, the really talented kids in Africa, they don't get the good coaching, and then they slip through the cracks because they can't. They just don't understand the game. Their IQ doesn't catch up to the athleticism in time for them to have a great career. Now, what I would tell a kid is that's true. You know that you're at a disadvantage. There's no questions. There's no doubt about that. But one thing they do have is access to players like me, access to players in the BAL. They have the internet now where they can see stuff online, and you really just need a hoop and a little bit of ground to play on and train. And is it as great as the kids that are 12 years old back in the US? No, maybe not. But we got to start somewhere. We got to do with what we can. And one advantage that they have now, as opposed to like the older generation, is access to people and access to information. So I would say, even if your conditions are not as good, try to get them some access to some information, some access to good players, and try to do what you can with what you have. And the market is the market. The professional market. They frankly, like, it's sad to say, but they don't look at that stuff. They don't care like where you came from or what resources you had. They're really just looking at it as can you help them? And so African kids got to just do their best with what they have to try to use the small resources they may have to make it to the highest level. And another thing I'll say is I'm always trying to help players too. So you can reach out to me like on social networks, or if you see me, like, I always want to help a younger generation, especially African players, because I think they have more potential than anybody in the world, to be honest. So reach out to me anytime. Like, I try to help players all the time with skills, with mindset, anything.
Okay. You mentioned something very interesting, the lack of, proper coaching. Obviously, that
Yeah.
accounts for so many things at the end of the day to be able to reach at that level when it comes to the technicalities of the game. You have played in Mozambique, you've played in Nigeria, you've played in Rwanda. So apart from maybe improving the area of the coaching aspect itself, are there any other areas that you've noticed in African basketball that perhaps need some improvement for us to be able to catch up with talent from everywhere else?
Yeah, coaching is the biggest thing. I'll be honest. Coaching is the biggest thing because when you're 12 years old, your mind doesn't have any really level of IQ for the game usually. Whether you're in America or Africa or wherever you're at, you're usually like a really blank slate. So those coaches that you get when you're like 12, 13, 14 years old are so important. So we need to keep training African coaches because those guys are so important for the development of African basketball. And the other thing is structure of leagues. Like the federations, they got to get it together. They got to be able to put together solid leagues that go on for 5 or 6 months during the year, that are respectable, that are playing at least like one game a week. The facility question is also a thing. But one good thing about places that I played, like Rwanda and Mozambique, is they might have one good facility and they just try to have all the games in there, and that's okay. So try to have, if there's only 4 or 5 serious teams that are going to seriously want to play the league, just have 4 or 5 teams in the league. Don't try to stretch it out to 10 or 11 teams if 5 or 6 of them aren't going to be serious and aren't going to be to the games on time, doing the things that they need to do to make the league, look professional. Start slow. I think the mindset in Africa sometimes is like they want everything so fast. They're just so result oriented. Hey, can we win the championship now? Hey, can this player be amazing now? Hey, it's a process. Like, it's step by step by step. Europeans and the Americans, step by step by step, and you try to keep getting a little bit better every day. You start slow, and then you wake up one day and you have a real basketball culture. So the mindset of like the leaders in Africa, I think, can change a little bit to more patience, more long game, as opposed to instant gratification and just looking at the results, quick results all the time. So that's what I think.
Okay. So coming to your personal journey within basketball, what are some of the, in fact, what inspired you? I know you come from Wake Forest. If my if my memory serves me right, I think Chris Paul played at Wake Forest. I
Yeah,
started to be corrected, but I think Chris Paul played at Wake Forest. Uh, what inspired you to, pursue the game of basketball as a profession? And what are some of the major challenges that you've faced so far in your journey? And what would you tell a kid that may take a similar route?
yeah. The inspiration for me was more self motivation. Like I remember just as I would get better at basketball, I noticed that people enjoyed watching me play or enjoyed playing with me, and like I made relationships from basketball, and it took me to college, and I people I gained like respect for my work and how hard I was working. Not necessarily that I was a good player, but just that I tried to be a good player and that I came to practice every day. And like I feel like that made me feel good, having like respect on my peers, and just being able to make new relationships with good people. So that's really like the truth about inspiration. I feel like I never had like a super big role model or anything that I looked to. And my main challenge was on the court was probably my size and my like lack of physical attributes. Of course, I'm short. I'm not super fast. So I had to get really, really good at the skill stuff: shooting, dribbling, passing. My fundamentals had to be really, really good. And so I would tell any kid like really, really work on the fundamentals. Really, really like seek guidance from players that have done it. Try to get somebody to take them under your wing and show you the ropes. And stay humble. Stay humble. I think like the biggest thing in basketball that kills a lot of players is entitlement and them just not being humble, because the game will hit you in the face, and if you're not showing humility, if you're not humble, then nobody's going to want to play with you. Nobody's going to want to pick you for their team. So stay humble, stay hungry, and do your best, and you'll end up having a good life, having a good career.
As a point guard, obviously, I remember growing up, we would hear things like, okay, you're the second coach on the floor. You're the one that must be able to have the highest IQ. You must be able to know things and see things even before they happen and make them happen. What, how important or what leadership skills have you picked along the way in your career as a point guard?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think point guards definitely have to have a coaching sense to them for sure. The main thing that I've learned over my career has been every player that you play with is different, and you have to talk to them in a different way, and you have to learn their tendencies. And it really is. It's like you're feeding everybody. You're really trying to make everyone enjoy the game, everyone touch the ball, everyone feel like they're a big part of it. And I think that's something that I really learned. Everybody's different. Figure out what they want, what they need, and try to blend that as best you can with what the team needs, and learn everybody's personality. I think that's something that I've gotten better at over the years. And I think it's important for young point guards to know. Learn your teammates, learn them, learn their personality, learn what they need, learn what makes them tick. So, yeah.
Okay. You've mentioned again something interesting, the issue of the ability to communicate. And, communication for me is something that is not only restricted to the game of basketball, but something that we use in everyday life in different settings altogether, where we find ourselves in. And you've mentioned something important, learning the tendencies of different people and having the wisdom to be able to reach out to them and communicate with them effectively. How do you deal with difficult teammates? I mean, have you ever been, you join a team and there's this guy who was the guy and still thinks he's the guy, and feels like, he doesn't need to submit to anybody else. How do you deal with such kind of people?
Yeah, I think it's like social intelligence and like emotional intelligence is super important for life, like you said, even for your job. Like communication is everything, for in my opinion, and obviously basketball is a part of that too. So it's huge. I can't think of a particular time where I've dealt with. Obviously, I've had teammates that are a little bit tough to deal with sometimes, but I haven't had too many. Usually, it's from lack of humility, like you said. But I don't necessarily think like anybody needs to submit to anybody. I think it's just you got to work together. And the point guard is usually the leader on the floor. He usually has the ball a lot. So the point guard's got to be the most humble guy of all, because he's got to hear what everyone has to say and then say, hey, this is kind of how we're going to do it. And sometimes you might get some pushback, but usually if you're a productive player and they respect you and you really have their best interest at heart and the team's best interest at heart, everyone will come together. So you can't fake it. They'll figure out quick if you're actually a selfish player and you're just um, you know putting a facade up to everybody that you're gonna want to help everybody and you want to be this type of leader. You got to be real about it. And in that case, everyone will respect you, and usually you can win some games.
One of the things I've heard about, American players, that when you guys come to Africa, obviously your priority is just stats. You just want to get good stats that you can use for your next opportunity. And to me, it's not a bad thing. If there's an opportunity for you to do that and you need that for your next opportunity, it's not a bad thing. But how do you strike a balance between stat padding and, fitting within a team system?
Yeah, my philosophy is a little different. Like, I actually think, like, if you put the team first and you do everything it takes and you win games, stats are a little bit less important. Now, if you're losing every game and you don't have any stats, sure, that can be rough. But when you're winning games, everyone usually wins. Everyone usually gets a step up in their career after that. That's usually what I've experienced. Now, does that mean like I want to score 3 points, or if you ask me if I want to score 3 points or 20 points, like I'll pick 20 points, of course, but I'm not going to do that at the cost of winning games. So I really think even in Africa, winning is the most important thing. If that means you have to sacrifice a little bit to win, I just think that's true because, I've heard that too, and Americans have that reputation for sure, not just in Africa but everywhere else in the world. But I really think like if you're winning, it really solves everything, and usually you can move forward in your career even without.
Okay. I think I forgot to ask this important question when we were starting. I mean, we know you for basketball. When we hear Will Perry, the first thing that comes to mind is basketball. What are your hobbies or interests outside basketball? What do you do?
Yeah, I actually, thanks for asking that. I actually do want to mention I did start an agency, um, and it's called Perry Hoops Management, and we are trying to help young players, get jobs in Europe or Africa. And we actually have an African guy in our agency, Douglas Kandulu. He's playing in Spain right now. You might know him. He's from Zambia.
Yeah.
Really, really good guy, and he works with us. So I work on that a lot. I help young players. We try to sign them and get them jobs in the professional market. Other interests would be like personal finance. I studied finance and business management in college, so I'm really nerdy into business finance, and I like history too. So I like studying history, and I'm kind of a nerd in that regard. But obviously, basketball takes up a lot of my time. So.
Hmm. Okay. I like the combination, basketball, finance, which is obviously very key if one is going to have not only a successful career, but a successful, lucrative career at the end of the day. You've mentioned a very interesting name, Douglas Kandulu, a kid that, I'll tell you a little bit of a story. Dougie comes from my club. Okay. That's the club that I also had an opportunity to, play for way back. And the first time I saw Dougie, I mean, I thought this boy is just tall. He can't play basketball. He doesn't have what it takes and everything. And then, I disappeared for a while, came back to watch the games, and I was shocked with what I was seeing. So obviously, there's so many that are tuned in right now and would like to find out uh, how how can they have a similar opportunity like Douglas, maybe to work with you, ultimately to get that exposure out there? What is it that they need to do?
Yeah, so yeah, Douglas has been amazing. Douglas is a great example of humility, like I talked about earlier. He was humble enough to listen to good coaching, listen to us, listen to people that knew the game, and he wasn't entitled and he didn't think he was better than anybody. And look where he is now. He's a great example of humility and hard work. He really works at it. So to do what something like Douglas did, First of all, you got to have a base level of basketball talent, of course. You know, you can't just hop off the street and play professionally. That's just not going to work. So you need to try to get in the Zambian league. You need to try to play. You need to get some good video. You need to work on your game to get to the level that you can play professionally. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing is reach out. Reach out. Like I said before, information and people like me are accessible now with the social media age. So reach out. I'll try to help you, no doubt. And if I can't help you, I'll try to point you in a decent direction. But the main thing is you got to get to a level of play where you can help a team professionally and they're willing to pay you to do it. So keep working on your game every day. Douglas did that, and Douglas didn't have super good resources either. Douglas just made it happen, worked hard, and was humble enough to do it.
So if for example a point guard is watching us right now, I mean I'm deliberately using the word point guard or maybe the position point guard because that's what I know, and I know that's what
Sure.
you're good at. That's what you know. But this applies to everybody else that is watching us right now. Um, what when you say they have to get their game to a level where they can professionally be recognized and offered an opportunity which will lead to pay ultimately, what are some of the specific things you would advise them to do as a player to be able to get to that level?
Yeah, so you need the fundamentals to be really, really good. And as cliche as it sounds, it's passing, dribbling, and shooting. Like you have to be able to make open threes. So when you're open from three, you got to be able to make the shot. At a pretty good percentage. Obviously, you're not going to make every shot, but you got to make a good percentage of open shot. You got to have ball handling skills. So that means if somebody's guarding you one on one and trying to take the ball from you, you got to be able to handle the ball. They can't bother you to the point where you're uncomfortable with the basketball. And passing, seeing the court. So you really, really need to see open teammates, be able to play with your head up and looking around, and someone's open, you need to pass it to them. The professional game right now is really, really pick and roll oriented. So you really need to know how to play a ball screen. So if a point guard is watching this right now, I assume he knows what a pick and roll is, a ball screen is. And so that's really, really got to get good at. And obviously, you got plenty of videos on YouTube. You got the NBA you can watch, the EuroLeague. I could help you with that stuff. But yeah, getting really good at the pick and roll, and then really, really good at your fundamentals. And it's funny because a lot of players think like, "Oh, I can shoot. Yeah, but shooting at a professional level is a whole different level than just shooting with your friend and making 7 out of 10 spot. If you're shooting alone with your friend and you're shooting 10 times, you really want to try to make 8 or 9. That's a high level shooter. So it's tough, but those are the things that I would work on if I was a point guard trying to make it to the professional level these days. And work on your body too. You got to be strong, even if you're not a big guy like some of the players that are playing professionally. You got to have a strong core and strong legs and strong body. So.
Okay. Um, I've noticed, for example, if I look at the NBA right now, some of the kids that are coming into the league, they're quite bigger, and obviously one would conclude that possibly the direction that the league is taking favors size. Look at the Victor Wembanyama, and look at some of the kids that are playing, the 2, 3, including 1 positions at the end of the day. It's like basketball is becoming positionless,
For
and
sure.
size, and size is one thing that is heavily emphasized. Uh, do you think that the point guard position is dying?
I would say yeah, it's dying, but it's just dying in the sense that like maybe me and you grew up knowing it. It's not going to be too many like John Stocktons coming up anymore, but there's still going to be point guards. They're just going to play differently. Steve Nash probably if he was born today or playing in today's game probably would shoot more threes. Right? He didn't shoot nearly enough threes. Maybe he should have. So everything changes. If you're a really good small point guard and you can pass the ball, play pick and roll, and you're super athletic, then yeah, you could still play in the NBA today. Maybe you won't be considered a pure point guard, but you still can play in the NBA. So the answer to the question is a little bit complicated. Yeah, the point guard like me and is probably dying, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be a point guard position available on every team, and if that means that it's a James Harden type guy and the smaller guy plays off the ball more, then it is what it is. But it's the league is changing. You're right. There's a lot of big wings now, like 3-and-D guys is what we call them, like guys that can play defense really well, and then they just catch and shoot threes on offense. So that's another thing that I think that's another good thing to talk about for your audience. If you have any basketball players, if you're tall and athletic, like 6'6" and athletic, really work on 3-and-D style basketball. Meaning like you got to guard one-on-one really well, and then on offense catch and shoot threes at a high level, and you can play professionally for sure. And that wasn't the case 10-20 years ago, but now there's a spot on every team for those type of players. You don't need too much, one-on-one talent or crazy ball handling. If you're 6'6", 6'7", then 3-and-D is a huge opportunity.
Okay. Let's talk about your experience in Mozambique. Within the southern region, obviously, there are two countries, that we consider to be the powerhouses, Angola and Mozambique. And you had an opportunity to play in Mozambique. How was your stay there, basketball wise?
Yeah, I like Mozambique a lot. The culture of basketball is really rich. Like everybody loves basketball. I played for Ferroviario de Beira, which is like a historic club, and it was an amazing experience. Yeah, we won. Yeah, we won two championships in a row, and I think we'd never lost. Yeah, we never lost a game. I went back a third year, and we ended up losing in the semifinals. So that was a disappointment. But yeah, for 2 years in a row, we won two national championships and never lost, and went to the BAL 2 times. So it was an amazing run, honestly, and like I really appreciated how they treated me.
Okay. And then in Rwanda, how was it like?
Rwanda is great. Rwanda is the best country. I think Rwanda is the showing the most growth in basketball, I'll say. Obviously, you have Egypt and Tunisia and Morocco. Maybe they have like a more historic basketball lifespan. But Rwanda's next up. It's growing. Everybody is serious. They have 10 teams in the league. It's super high level. Rwanda is a great country. It's a great country to start getting into basketball. It's going to be big.
Okay. And now let's get to Rivers Hoopers. Obviously, I'll be very honest with you. When I was watching the build up, the Road to BAL, the Elite 16, and all these other preliminary tournaments that lead to the actual BAL tournament, I never thought Rivers Hoopers would come out third. To be honest, I mean, I just never thought. And I was like, oh, they've signed Will Perry. Oh, okay, interesting. And I'm like, is Will Perry sure of going to Rivers Hoopers? Because I mean, I thought, you could have gone to another club that, I thought could have won or was closer to winning the championship.
Sure.
But yet you signed with Rivers Hoopers, and the rest is history. You guys did an amazing job. Give us good basketball. Give us a good show. Just tell us a little bit about your Rivers Hoopers journey and experience altogether. What really motivated you guys and got you that far?
Yeah, so when they contacted me, I thought the same as you. I was like, no way, Nigeria, it's going to be structurally not so good. They're not super serious. They're going to, I'm not going to lie to you. And I told them that too. I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. So, thanks, but no thanks, right? But then when I heard their plan and how hey, we want to get serious this year, and they told me some other players that they were going to sign or that they were going to try to sign, I started thinking, well, maybe it is a good place to be. One, there's not super high expectations, so you can kind of go there with nothing to lose. That was attractive. And two, I really liked the team they were going to put together, and they let me kind of not build the team, but they let me kind of have a say too. Like, hey, yeah, get this guy. So that meant a lot to me. So the rest is history. It went really well, but at the beginning was I was a little bit nervous doing it, but I'm super glad I did. It was a perfect fit, and the guys we had on the team really fit together really good. My game fits really good with like a pick and roll big man that's a defender that's athletic, that's fast, like Peter Olasameka. So me and him were like perfect for each other. Obviously, Kelvin Ameo was great. Divine Eke, super unselfish player, plays defense, athletic, rebounds. It was a really good match of players, and when you get that, you can do some damage.
What kind of opportunities has the BAL or exposure on the BAL stage opened up for you?
It's been amazing. Lots of networking. I've met a lot of people through the BAL and even in the NBA world. So I'm really looking forward to maybe post career using the BAL network to maybe start a new career. Right. So that's been amazing. Basketball wise, it's been great. I mean, I signed in the Middle East, so I'm playing for a club called Al Nasser, which is a good club, and it's opened up a lot of basketball doors for me. So I'm grateful for the BAL, and it's been great.
So obviously, with you in the Middle East playing right now, are we likely to see you in the BAL next year?
I'll say 50-50. You know, it's this season is it might go into that season. So I don't want to say yes or no yet. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, you know, in basketball, you gotta play where you think is the best option for you. And you know, I don't want to say yes or no to that question, but just know that I'm for sure gonna play in Africa again before I'm done because I love Africa. It's one of my favorite basketball places now, and I'm sure it'll be for the rest of my career.
Okay. You said something interesting, about your post career, post basketball career, you coming back to Africa, specifically in which area? Administrating, coaching, maybe just being a scout, an agent. What exactly are we looking at when we talk about post career?
Yeah, so obviously I'm dipping my foot into the agency business and I'm enjoying it. And so that's a very good possibility. But I am interested in coaching and management too. So I got a couple things in my head. I definitely want to stay around basketball. So I'm not positive what I want to do, but I'm kind of dipping my toe in several different things to kind of see what I like and what I think I'd be good at. So I can be prepared when I retire from playing. I can get into the next business. But I would encourage anybody, even anybody in the communication business and journaling business or TV business, to try to get connected in the BAL because the networking there is really really good and it's worth it to be kind of in that ecosystem. So I'm enjoying it.
Mm, okay. Um, One of the things that obviously I'll ask you about has to do with, I mean, you've traveled, you've played in Europe, you've played in, the United States of America, and now Africa, the Middle East as we speak. Another issue that I always see is when we talk about women basketball. It's one area that I tend to notice that, again, in Africa, we're still not where we potentially could be. What are some of the differences that you've noticed that the continent can learn from other places to be able to improve women's basketball? You've mentioned the Basketball Africa League, and I've noticed as a keen follower of the Basketball Africa League that they do place premium on women's basketball.
Yeah, they do. They do. They do. And I think Africa just has to take that macro mindset that I talked about earlier, even within women's basketball. Like you need to start slow, step by step. Don't try to, you know, go for everything at once, you know, because then nothing will happen. So I think you need academies for women's basketball, similar to the NBA academy. Maybe you could start an academy for women's basketball. I think all the countries need to, even if it's a small amount of resources, they need to invest in coaching for women, for youth women's basketball, just like they need to keep doing for men, and just start step by step. Maybe the first year, you know, you don't even need a league in Zambia. Maybe you just need kind of an amateur tournament. You know, then the next year you try to create a better league, then a couple more teams to the league, then you add a couple more teams, and then 5-10 years from now you can really have something. But I think it all goes back to doing it step by step, not wanting everything all in 1 year or 2 years. Fighting through adversity, and I think in the end, Africa is going to win because I think the average population of Africa is like 19 or 20 years old. Nobody on earth has that advantage going for them. So you have so many young people about to come into adulthood in Africa, athletes, managers. They're gonna all need to do something, right? So I think the future is bright as long as they don't Africans don't get ahead of themselves and try to have everything all at once. Step by step, build a structure foundation, and I think women's basketball can be big in Africa.
Okay, so being in a country where obviously basketball is not 100% professional, still in its infancy, growing structure-wise and other areas, the challenge that sometimes players often face is striking a balance. You have to work, pay the bills, do all these things, and at the same time, create time for the sport that you love and be able to put in the work and doing all these things. You have played in different continents and you have all these responsibilities. You're running an agency, and there's this personal finance thing that you're doing, I'm sure, at your own time for yourself and maybe others that may consult you in that line. How do you strike a balance when it comes to time management in all this?
Yeah, I think you don't overthink it. You do whatever feels right. Like for me right now, basketball is number one. So I work on my body every day. I try to eat right and do everything that I can during the day to be the best basketball player I can be. But then, after practice or after my workout, after lunch, I sit down and then it's agency time. Then I do my research on the agency or the other things that I need. So I think whenever I think about kind of like work-life balance, it's really just going with your gut, whatever you feel is right. Don't overthink it. Everybody's kind of idea of balance is different. So don't let anybody judge you or say you should be doing this or you should be doing that. I think everybody's idea is different, and so I do the best I can, and I just live with the results.
Mm, okay. You've mentioned something interesting, the issue of taking care of your body. I know a lot of players right now that, would immediately after a game, after a crucial game, they've won the game. And, 5 minutes after, or just immediately after they shower, the next thing they go to, or the next place you'll find them is a bar where they're drinking alcohol, celebrating the win, and doing all these things. And, again, over the weekend, they're back to playing league games. And some of these kids, I'll be very honest with you, in my view, are very talented. They have not only the raw talent, but they even have the physical attributes. They've got the size, they've got the athleticism, and all these things
Sure.
that come with what would open up a canister of opportunities for them in different places of the world. But this is the kind of life that they live. What are your thoughts on that?
I try not to judge what anybody does, but I will just give you my honest opinion. I think that's wrong. I think that's the wrong way to do it. Now, if that kid wants to just play and enjoy like a semi-professional basketball career, that's fine. Go drink beer and not take care of your body and not lift weights. That's fine. But if you want a professional basketball career and you really want to make enough, money to sustain yourself with just playing basketball, it's impossible to do it without really taking care of your body. I mean, I would tell that guy like start small, I keep saying on this interview, like go 1 week with no alcohol, no sugar, no unhealthy food, 8 hours of sleep every night. Make sure you're eating something with protein in it after the games. Um, Lift weights. A lot of African kids need to lift weights because you really need to get your tendons and body strong to be able to play this game. And if you can go 1 week with that discipline, then up it to 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, 3 months, and after 7, 8 months, you'll see yourself as a whole different player. And once you're, raising your level and you're really dominating where you're at, then you can kind of take off to a bigger market and see if you can play professionally. But yeah, I mean, drinking alcohol is after a game is not ideal for a professional. But I'm not gonna say I don't, have a beer every now and then if I'm celebrating something. But it's the wrong way to go if you got bigger dreams.
Mm. Interesting. So you've obviously been, I mean, you've traversed in Africa, Europe, and all these other places. How was the cultural shift for you, and what have you learned from this journey?
I've learned a lot. I've learned that the world's a lot different everywhere you go. So if you, I don't know how much traveling you've done, but man, if you go to Europe, US, even the Middle East, and Africa, everyone has a different idea of life. Everyone's culture is different. But humans are humans, you know, they all want the same thing. They want their family to be good. They want to be happy. They want to do what they love. They want to be successful. So in the end, you know, humans are humans. Everybody wants the same things, but the cultures are all different. And, you know, you got to adapt to every culture you go to and respect it for what it is and try to leave your mark wherever you go.
Hmm. So recently, I've been having a lot of debate, Will, and I'd like to tap your mind on this, with a lot of colleagues and peers. When it comes to investment in sports or growth of basketball generally in a country like Zambia. And from our conversation, what has been generally emanating are two views. When it comes to professionalism, you are a professional basketball player. And obviously, at the beginning of this conversation, you did indicate that, you had to put in the work and everything, and the rest just fell into place. Now, the debate that we've been having has to do with making that bold step to professionalize. Okay. You've been in Mozambique, you've been in Rwanda, you've been in Nigeria, you've been in all these places. You know the kind of leadership chaos that sometimes governs these jurisdictions. You have an idea of all that. So when somebody says we cannot maybe go professional in terms of basketball, say even starting at team level, that we cannot do that until we have enough money to be able to pay people like Will Perry and all these other talents coming. What are your thoughts on that? Personally, I'll tell you what I think. So that you can approach this holistically. Personally, I feel like even without money, you can start putting in structures in place. You can start putting in the required uh, models, leadership models, and all these things in place so that the only thing that will be sort of like icing on the cake maybe could be the money, but these other things you already do them. So these are the kind of conversations that I've been having with different people, and others have been arguing for and others against. But what are your thoughts on that? Should we wait as teams until we have the money for us to be professional administratively and in all these other areas, or we can do that and just wait for
Yeah.
that icing on the cake? Your thoughts?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's like I said earlier, like start small. If I was in charge, I would try to find a good candidate for the Federation of Zambian Basketball. Imagine, and I would tell him, all right, here's what we're gonna do. If I was him, I would say, all right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna say, hey, we're starting a league. All right, it's a semi-professional league. That means if players want to be professional, they can be professional. But obviously, if they want to work and play, they work and play. Whatever, and you have to submit, a roster of your league. And if you're gonna pay a guy $0 or $10 or whatever, $1 million, whatever, you got to submit exactly what you're gonna pay him. And obviously, most of it's gonna be barely any money. Fine, perfect. And then if we have three teams that submit these requirements, and those three teams prove that they're going to have the funds from a sponsor, or personal funding, whatever, then they'll be admitted into the league. And if there's seven teams that can't do that, okay, forget it. The seven teams got to go play in another league. So maybe the first year you only have three teams in the league, whatever. Then you put a schedule together. Make sure the schedule is 3 or 4 month league, and put the games on this day, this day, this day, this day. Make sure you have the gym set up to where they can host a league. Make sure you have the referees, and the people that do the scores table. And what I would do is, if you know a team doesn't pay their guys in the second month, they can't pay the guys, even if it's a small amount of money. You put a fine on them, or you say, "Hey, man, you're not going to be able to come back next year if you do this one more time." And what you do is you try to weed out the people that aren't serious, and you go step by step. And that means even if you have two teams in the league, you have two teams, whatever. They play each other every time. The next year, trust me, you'll have three teams. Then you'll have four teams. Then you'll have five teams. And you keep doing that until you build like a structure where everyone everyone's on the same page, and they know if they mess up, then they're out of the league. If you are not serious, or if you don't show up to the game on time, or if you don't, I don't know, if you don't have a team physio on the bench, then you get a fine. The team physio doesn't. You don't need money. You don't need to pay the guy money. You just need to get an intern that's studying, for injury recovery stuff, and tell them, hey man, come sit on the bench. This is good for you, good for us. So this is what I would do. I would start really, really slow and try to weed out all the craziness that happens. What I see a lot in Africa is like they let a lot of things slide, like changing in schedules, teams promising players to pay a lot of money and then don't pay them the money. Like if you only have a certain amount of money, just be honest and say, this is the amount of money we have. This is what we're going to do. And this is what we're going to pay this guy every month. And the league has to make sure that he gets that every month. And if they don't, then the team gets in trouble. So I think you start small, you go step by step, and that's how you build. And now you have something to build for in Africa, because you have the BAL and you have Road to Ball. So, you can start really growing, financially with that, but it's going to take time. You can't think it's all going to be done in 1 year. And like a lot of African clubs think, and I think they got to really see the long-term vision. But yeah, you can do it with a small amount of money. You can do it. You don't need to wait for the big bucks. You just need to do it the right way. And once you get respect and people start seeing you as reliable, then better things will come. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I see it.
No, it does. It does make a lot of sense. And I like the fact that you mentioned the fact that in Africa, especially when it comes to leadership, basketball wise, we let a lot of things slide. And I mean, I can tell you, it's something that saddens me a lot, because even just the issue of sticking to a simple thing like a fixture, like how do we improve streaming of games, or how do we sign deals that would ensure that our games are publicized every time if we don't know that the fixture can change within 24 hours to a game and things like that. So I mean, I just totally
stick to a schedule at the beginning.
Yes.
Every time they're going to show up on time, you're going to show up on time, the referees show up on time. And if they don't, then do a penalty or tell that team, hey, that's your warning. Next warning, you're out of the league. Or the referee doesn't show up, then hey, you're out, man. Like you got to really weed out the bad stuff, and it takes time, and there's pain in that, because the first 2 years is going to be chaos if you think about it, because it's going to be a lot of mistakes. A lot of people complaining. If you're the federation president, you tell them, hey, we're doing this stuff the right way. So if you don't like it, get out of the sport. Go do another sport. But this is how we're doing it. And I'm positive after 2 years, a year and a half, you'll see Zambia will start getting a ton of respect, and it'll start building from there. But sorry to cut you off, but I am passionate about that stuff.
No, I mean, we also appreciate, and that is the major reason why, obviously, I even do a show like this, because at the end of the day, we just have to have the frank conversations, the candid conversations. We're supposed to have those conversations, not for the purpose of discrediting anybody, but pointing out what is wrong with the view of correcting it, so that at the end of the day, everybody else can, benefit from the shared growth that we envision basketball to bring ultimately. So personally, I like it, when people like you have been on the continent, played on the continent, notice some of these things, and you're able to pick them out and be able to guide in terms of where you feel we can improve. I mean, I can tell you that I've met people back at home that will tell you, that, look, I'm just voluntarily doing this. Basketball doesn't pay me. In fact, I'm putting in the money myself. So don't expect me to show the kind of quality leadership that is expected to transform how the game is being managed. And these are the debates that I'm always having with people. Like, look, if you feel like this is an option, quit. Why did you campaign? Why did you tell people to vote for you? Why did you allow everybody, where's that promise that you gave? At the end of the day, if you're going to come here and say, look, I'm putting in money, like it's an honor, we're supposed to appreciate mediocrity because you're putting in money.
Yeah, I respect. Hey, I'm not this, or this doesn't give me any money. or it's a waste of my time, I respect that. Go ahead and go ahead, and somebody else will come in. I don't see an issue with that. I'll never talk bad about a person that is honest and says, "Hey, this is not for me," and goes. But don't stay in a position or in a don't do that. That's why the growth on the continent is a struggle sometimes. It's that kind of attitude.
And I know that from your finance, obviously, as we get to wrap up our conversation, Will, from your experience in terms of business studies, practical experience, and all these things. One of the things that obviously the Basketball Africa League has done well is to introduce the commercialization of the sport on the continent. Football for a long time was enjoying the commercial benefits that come with proper investment and all these things in sport, but BAL is doing that for basketball. And of course, the trickle down effect will take time before we can begin to see it extend further, throughout the continent of Africa. But what advice would you give, to federations who year in, year out struggle to be able just to get the required sponsorship that that they need? What would you say to them?
Yeah, the NBA. To comment on the NBA part, the NBA is one of the future, and they're willing to. They're losing money on BL for sure. So they're putting in investment, knowing that in the future they're going to get a big return. That happened in China. They knew China was a huge market, but at the beginning, they just went over to China and was like, hey, let's try to push the NBA out here. And, they spent a lot of money doing it, probably didn't make a lot of money back. But about 10 years, 20 years went by, and now China is the number one jersey buyer, I think, in the world. So Chinese people buy more jerseys than even the Americans. And the CBA, Chinese Basketball League, is big, and it's the NBA is huge in China. So NBA is super smart. They play the long game, step by step. They don't care if they lose money the first year, second year, third year, seventh year. They know that when time goes on, they're going to make money. Federations kind of need to think like that too. And I'm not saying pour a bunch of money into Zambian basketball and lose money for 8 years, okay? But I'm saying don't try to not think so short term. I think federations right now are thinking like, how can we make money next year? How can we have the biggest league next year? Like, they really need to go slow, step by step by step. And I know it's hard to convince sponsors that, but I think that should be your pitch to sponsors and people with personal funds that want to invest in basketball. Hey, this investment is going to take time, but you're going to be the pioneer of Zambian basketball. If you help with this, you're going to be remembered forever, and your return on investment is going to take some time, but it's going to come. It's going to come. So I would federations to think long term. You don't need a bunch of money at the beginning. You just need proper framework and structure, like we talked about, and then the respect will come, and then the money will come. It's hard for sponsors to see giving money to a league or a country if the schedule isn't even official, or if sometimes the team shows up late for the game, or if sometimes the court is I don't know, being used by something else that day, so they change the game at the last minute. So think about that first. Like, really get the structure down and the respect of the basketball community before you think about bringing in the big bucks. But that would be my pitch for federations. Like, really start small, and see the future, not the short-term stuff.
Okay. Lastly, as we get to close, I always want to also find, or maybe just get to hear this, from the people that I talk to, like yourself. What has been your most embarrassing or funny moment in your journey of basketball that you can share? Yeah.
Most embarrassing or funny moment?
Yeah, something that you look back and be like, okay, and they just laugh about it and like, okay, that happened.
I did have kind of a funny, like, when I first went overseas my first year. So it was my first time ever leaving my country, of course. I went to Spain. I played in the the same league that Douglas Kandula is in right now. I played in that league. That was my first professional job. And anyway, so I remember this has happened to several other players, I'm sure, but like I remember like this second game we played an away game, and I remember I didn't put my jersey under my warm up, and I came off the bench, and when I tried to check into the game, I didn't have my jersey. So you know how that goes. You freak out and you like run back and you grab the jersey, you know. But I was like, that was my second professional game, and I remember being like so embarrassed. I was like, everyone. And yeah, I'll never forget that because that was super embarrassing. And obviously, you can laugh about it now because it's not a huge deal. But I remember back then thinking it was like the end of the world.
Okay, well, obviously, any last words for everybody that's watching us right now? You know, those people that celebrate you, that love your game, and that will want to be where you are right now. You know, the boys and the girls out there that aspire, you know, like you said, obviously, we are not a product of our environments. We shouldn't accept to be a product of our certain environments, especially if the environments are negative. What would be your last words to everybody watching us right now?
Yeah, first I'd say thank you for listening. Thanks for having me to you on the channel. It's a good show and I enjoyed it. To anybody watching that loves basketball, you know, keep chasing your dream. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. Even if you have a lack of pathway right now, you're gonna make one. Africa has something really, really special. You guys have raw talent. You guys have the will to work hard, and you have resilience in your blood. So use that to your advantage, and you can do anything you want to do.
Mm. Okay, thank you very much, Will, for coming through. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Today, I was talking to Will Perry. Like I said, he doesn't need introduction for those that follow basketball on the African continent. This is a name that they know, and you know he has done quite some amazing things through his basketball journey. And today, we're just looking at learning, you know, some of the things at a personal level that have helped him to achieve what he has achieved, and also at the same time, just getting a broader understanding and view, you know, from somebody outside, you know, who comes here, sees what's happening, especially in our federations and all these things that happen. What is it that he thinks maybe could propel us further, not only from a player level, but also even at, you know, organizational level. And we've been privileged to be able to get that wisdom. And for me, the most important thing that, you know, Will mentioned is, you know, the sense of entitlement. I think it is foolishness for any player, according to Will. I mean, he's there. He can disagree if I'm misrepresenting him right now. To think that you deserve the best when your talent is not even near average. So it's important that work must be put in. It is important that discipline must be observed. It is important, you know, that the right mentality, which is respect for the game, and also just knowing, having a clear vision of what it is that you want from the game of basketball, as there are so many opportunities out there, as you've heard from Will. I mean, who knew that he could have, you know, come to Africa and Africa would be a stepping stone for him. So if he can achieve that, I believe anybody watching us right now is capable of achieving that. And Will, maybe before I let you go, you mentioned that people are free to get in touch with you and let you know, maybe talk to you with regards prospects of how they can collaborate and work with you for future opportunities. But what I would like to find out is, you know, you said film is an important part of, you know, the package when it comes to talking to you. Are we talking professional filming, or just, you know, I can do film with my phone and show you what I'm capable of doing? Can that suffice?
Yeah, they can take a video on their iPhone of them playing, you know, with nobody, just by themselves. I think it's good because it's you know, showing who you are playing basketball. So it's enough. Yeah, reach out to me. I use Instagram a lot, WhatsApp. I'm not going to give out my WhatsApp number, but I use Instagram a lot. So reach out on Instagram. I try to help young players all the time, or older players all the time, and I love doing that, talking basketball, trying to help, and even they can help me sometimes. You know, it's not always me giving the advice. So I love hearing from y'all and hearing from people. So, you know, reach out to me.
Okay, so I just needed to get that out of the way in case, you know, I start receiving messages and saying, well, I don't have a professional camera, I don't have somebody. So you've heard it yourself. Just get good footage. Good footage clear footage, send the man or engage the man, talk to him, and you never know. This could be the beginning of something or a turnaround for you when it comes to basketball. So I've done my part. I've brought the agent here. I brought the player here. I brought the financial expert here. So you can benefit from him. You can talk to him. You can engage him. And as you've heard, we are very much lucky and privileged that he's willing to be able to just respond. And when he has the time, talk to you and advise you where he can. So please take advantage, and thank you very much for joining me on Off the Court. See you next week, same time. And of course, we will be talking basketball, but this time around, we will be bringing it locally. So we know the national championship is up and coming. We will be able to just talk about, the preparations and some of the things. This is when Kelvin Bain is joining. Let's go, Winston, even though I'm a bit skeptical about you. Kelvin, come on. What have I done? What are you skeptical about? Okay, so that is Kelvin Bain, one of the people, that frequently supports this particular show, a great basketball mind all the way from Zimbabwe. And, his input is valuable on this particular channel. He has coached the national team of Zimbabwe. And of course, he has, played a very, very significant role in the growth of basketball in Zimbabwe. So we really, really appreciate your support, Kelvin. And whatever you're skeptical about, don't say it here. Please talk to me afterwards. Okay, talk to me afterwards. I don't trust you, Zimbabwean man. I don't trust you. Okay, so Brighton, okay, we'll definitely reach out. Thank you. Brighton will appreciate. And everybody else watching, we'll see you next time. From me and Will, it is good night.